every single round, if you watch my documentary that came out on HBO called The Golden Boy, it explains to you what I was thinking, what I was feeling. I literally wanted to die in that ring.
He was once the golden boy of boxing, an Olympic hero, a multimillionaire, and a global superstar. But today, Oscar de la Hoya's name is making headlines for all the wrong reasons. What happened to the man who once ruled the ring and the boardroom? Why are former allies suddenly turning against him? And is he really fighting for his life at just 52? His story is both heartbreaking and disturbing. At his peak, Oscar de la Hoya wasn't just a successful boxer, he was the face of the entire sport. From the moment he stepped into the professional arena, he dominated the headlines, the pay-per-view charts, and the financial rankings. In an era overflowing with talent, de la Hoya stood at the top, commanding attention not just for his skills in the ring, but for his unmatched marketability. De la Hoya won 11 world titles across 6 different weight classes, a feat that placed him among the most elite fighters in boxing history. He wasn't just moving up in weight, he was conquering every level, defeating the top contenders and collecting belts with ruthless precision. From super featherweight all the way to middleweight, de la Hoya didn't just participate, he owned the spotlight. Each title fight brought in massive audiences and massive paydays. Fans showed up in their numbers, networks paid top dollar, sponsors lined up, and, of course, de la Hoya delivered. By the time he fought Felix Trinidad in 1999, he was already one of the most bankable names in sports. That fight, along with others against Sugar Shane Mosley, Bernard Hopkins, and Ricardo Mayorga, helped generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. But he wasn't just a boxer fighting under a promoter, he became the promoter. Through Golden Boy Promotions, which he launched in 2002, Oscar became the rare athlete who didn't just earn from the fight purse, he earned from the whole event as well. Oscar had a piece of every ticket, every sponsor deal, and every broadcasting contract. Golden Boy Promotions quickly rose to become one of the most influential promotional companies in boxing, rivaling the likes of Top Rank and later staging blockbuster fights for stars like Canelo Alvarez, who became the company's crown jewel. While most retired fighters struggle to find relevance, de la Hoya turned his name into a corporate machine. He inked distribution deals with HBO, negotiated with major arenas, and maintained direct influence over the careers of future champions. And then there was the crossover appeal. While most boxers remained confined to sports pages and post-fight interviews, de la Hoya reached mainstream audiences effortlessly. He appeared in commercials, sat across from talk show hosts, and even headlined red carpets. In 2000, he did what few athletes ever attempted. He released a Latin pop album, and it didn't flop. In fact, it earned a Grammy nomination for Best Latin Pop Album. The boxing world was stunned, and the media just couldn't stop talking about him. That level of attention translated directly into income. At his commercial peak, Oscar once earned $52 million in a single match against Floyd Mayweather, making him one of the highest-paid athletes on the planet. Major brands like Nike, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's wanted his face. Spanish-language networks adored him, and the American media embraced him. The numbers weren't just impressive, they were staggering. By 2010, his estimated career earnings exceeded $300 million, excluding the long-term profits from his promotional company and licensing deals. More importantly, de la Hoya controlled his image in ways few fighters ever could. He wasn't chasing promoters or begging for matches because he had control of the contracts, the venues, and the broadcast rights. He built a business empire around his identity, proving that a fighter could be more than just a prize fighter, and in doing so, he became a blueprint for how boxers could leverage fame into real power. In every way that counted, Oscar de la Hoya was on top of the world. He sold out arenas. He broke viewership records. He built a business that reshaped boxing's promotional landscape, and he stood shoulder to shoulder with icons, not just in the ring, but in boardrooms and entertainment circles. But success, especially at that level, often comes with a cost. And behind the pay-per-view lights and the billion-dollar empire, the cracks were starting to show. He began facing the temptations that followed global recognition, and what began as one of the greatest boxing success stories of all time was about to collide with a series of deeply personal and very public challenges. While Oscar de la Hoya's public image was once the gold standard for success in boxing, the reality behind the scenes was far less glamorous. As the lights faded and the roar of the crowd gave way to silence, de la Hoya found himself trapped in a cycle of personal demons that fame had only hidden, not cured. What once looked like an empire built on discipline and vision was beginning to show signs of internal collapse, driven not by failure in the ring, but by a war within himself. After retiring from boxing in 2009, Oscar found something far more difficult than stepping into the ring, and that was facing life outside of it. For decades, training camps, fight schedules, press conferences, and pay-per-view events had structured every moment of his life. But once that structure was gone, so was the sense of purpose. That loss sent him into a downward spiral fueled by alcohol and illicit substance addiction. The Golden Boy was suddenly battling enemies that couldn't be fought with gloves, and the damage was deeply personal. Oscar openly admitted to using these substances to numb what he described as years of emotional pain. In 2011, he checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, acknowledging that he had been addicted for years. In an interview, he later confessed to being unfaithful to his wife, lying to those around him, and feeling like he had lost control of everything, despite his financial success and business empire. The struggle wasn't just with addiction, it was emotional. Oscar revealed that he had been battling depression and deep psychological pain, even during the height of his success. Despite the championships, the business deals, the red carpets, and the media praise, de la Hoya admitted that he felt lost. The fame, the cameras, and the money hadn't fixed the wounds that went far deeper than any headline could reveal. Part of that pain, he later revealed, stemmed from a lifelong strain in his family relationships. Though his father had trained him and helped build his career, their relationship was marked by tension and emotional distance. And the death of his mother, which had originally driven him to win Olympic gold in her honor, left a void that he never truly filled. He often spoke of not being able to mourn her properly, of burying that grief under titles, endorsements, and fame. And sadly, it eventually caught up with him. As his personal struggles played out in private, one scandal catapulted everything into the public spotlight. In 2007, controversial photos surfaced of Oscar wearing fishnet stockings and high heels in a hotel room. The images spread rapidly across gossip blogs and media outlets, setting off a firestorm of speculation and embarrassment. At first, de la Hoya and his representatives denied the photos were real, claiming they had been digitally altered. But the story wouldn't go away. In 2011, Oscar finally admitted that the photos were real, taken during a period when he was heavily under the influence of substances and alcohol. He said the incident reflected how far off track he had gone, revealing a side of his life that had been completely disconnected from the image of the polished, disciplined world champion the public knew. The honesty was shocking, but it also marked a turning point. For the first time, Oscar was beginning to address the parts of himself that years of success had helped him ignore. But even as he tried to rebuild, the consequences of his choices continued to unfold. His marriage to Millie Coricher, a Puerto Rican singer he had wed in 2001, suffered under the weight of his addiction and infidelity. The couple eventually separated, and De La Hoya acknowledged the toll his behavior had taken on his family. He had children from multiple relationships and admitted that his personal instability had made it difficult to be the father he wanted to be. The image of the Golden Boy was now complicated, no longer the perfect champion, and no longer the smiling figure on magazine covers. He was now a man in recovery, trying to reclaim control of a life that once looked picture-perfect from the outside, but was unraveling from within. The public watched as one of the most admired athletes of his time became a symbol of both greatness and fragility. The very fame that had once elevated Oscar De La Hoya also became the very thing that exposed his deepest flaws. The expectations, the constant attention, and the non-stop demand to perform, not just in the ring, but in life, created a pressure cooker that eventually exploded. His fall from grace wasn't sudden. It was slow, painful, and publicly visible. And even though he began to seek redemption through honesty and treatment, the damage to his legacy and his finances was far from over. For years, Oscar De La Hoya wasn't just the face of boxing inside the ring. He was the kingpin behind the scenes. With Golden Boy Promotions, he had positioned himself as a power broker, someone who controlled the contracts, the television deals, and the careers of some of boxing's biggest stars. He had become a retired fighter who made even more money after leaving the ring, and this was really rare. But as the years went on, the shine began to fade. De La Hoya's empire, once praised for giving fighters more control, started facing allegations of mismanagement, betrayal, and greed. And some of the attacks came from the very champions he once helped build. One of the first major cracks appeared when Gennady Golovkin, one of boxing's most dominant middleweights, publicly accused Golden Boy Promotions of stealing money from him. The allegations centered around the revenue split from his two massive fights with Canelo Alvarez, both promoted by Golden Boy. Golovkin and his team alleged that De La Hoya's company had manipulated expenses and withheld proper payment. The dispute eventually escalated to a full-blown $3 million lawsuit, and the damage was immense. The perception of Golden Boy as a fighter-first promotion was now being questioned, and the trust fighters had in him was broken. The situation grew even murkier when details emerged surrounding Oscar's alleged dealings with Juan Manuel Marquez, another Mexican boxing icon. According to reports, De La Hoya allegedly tried to demand $1 million out of Marquez's fight purse ahead of his 2011 mega fight against Manny Pacquiao. Marquez's camp was stunned, especially considering Golden Boy had no promotional contract for that particular fight. The move sparked quiet outrage behind the scenes, with some insiders suggesting it was a sign of desperation and an attempt to squeeze cash from any high-profile event, regardless of involvement. Marquez ultimately ignored the demand, but the situation added another layer of tension between De La Hoya and the broader boxing community. But the most public and damaging legal blow came from someone De La Hoya once considered his crown jewel, Saul Canelo Alvarez. For years, Canelo and Golden Boy Promotions had a seemingly unbreakable bond. De La Hoya had been instrumental in shaping Canelo's rise to superstardom, helping him secure major fights and making him the face of the promotion. But behind the scenes, trouble had been brewing. In 2020, Canelo dropped a bombshell, saying that he filed a lawsuit against both Golden Boy Promotions and streaming platform DAZN, accusing them of breach of contract, fraud, and negligent misrepresentation. At the heart of the issue was a $365 million deal, one of the most lucrative contracts in sports history that had completely unraveled. Canelo alleged that De La Hoya's team had mishandled negotiations, failed to secure promised fights, and ultimately cost him tens of millions of dollars. The lawsuit was a brutal public fallout, stripping away any illusion that the relationship had been stable. In legal filings, Canelo's side painted Golden Boy as disorganized and deceptive. Oscar fired back, insisting that Canelo was misinformed and blaming the breakdown on external factors. But the optics were clear. The most powerful fighter in the sport was accusing his own promoter of mismanagement and dishonesty. The case was eventually settled out of court, and Canelo cut ties with Golden Boy entirely. But the damage to De La Hoya's reputation as a trustworthy promoter was deep and almost irreversible. Losing Canelo didn't just mean losing a star, it meant losing the core of Golden Boy's financial structure. Pay-per-view sales dipped, broadcast leverage weakened, and De La Hoya was now seen by many in the industry as unreliable and out of touch with modern fighter demands. As these scandals mounted, rumors began swirling about De La Hoya's financial status. Was the Golden Boy going broke? Well, although Oscar De La Hoya is still a wealthy man because his real estate holdings, past fight earnings, and the remaining value of Golden Boy promotions have kept him afloat, there has been some damage to his financial reputation, and it's clear that his empire isn't as invincible as it once seemed. The lawsuits, fractured relationships, and public mistrust have severely damaged the brand he spent decades building. But while lawsuits and financial battles were damaging, they weren't the only thing wearing Oscar down. Because behind the public scandals, his body was quietly collapsing. Years in the ring had left scars no contract dispute ever could. And the real fight, which was for his health, was just beginning. Oscar De La Hoya's rise to stardom was built on speed, precision, and power. But behind the fame, behind the knockouts and sold-out arenas, was a body slowly breaking down, hit after hit, round after round. Boxing gave De La Hoya everything. And now, as he crosses into his 50s, it's clear that this same sport has taken its pound of flesh. The wear and tear of decades in the ring have left him with chronic health issues, nagging injuries, and even life-threatening emergencies that have forced him to reevaluate not just his comeback dreams, but his very place in the sport. The most serious warning came in September 2021, when De La Hoya was rushed to the hospital after contracting coronavirus. What was initially thought to be a precaution quickly escalated into a full-blown medical crisis. He was hospitalized in critical condition, with breathing difficulties so severe that he required intensive care. At the time, De La Hoya was deep into training for a comeback fight against former champion Vitor Belfort, which was meant to signal a return to the ring more than a decade after his retirement. The fight was canceled, and De La Hoya's health changed drastically. He was immediately rushed to the hospital, and reports later revealed that the virus had nearly taken his life, and with it, any realistic chance of returning to professional boxing. In truth, the virus only exposed what had been building for years, in a body pushed far beyond its limits. Retirement didn't mean rest for Oscar. It meant waking up to pain that never went away, fatigue that lingered for days, and a growing realization that the fighter in him was still alive, but the body was no longer capable of keeping up. But the virus wasn't the only battle he was fighting, because the long-term physical toll of his boxing career had already been dragging him down for years. As early as the 90s, Oscar was dealing with hand injuries, particularly to his left hand, the one he relied on for his signature jab and lightning-quick counters. Over the years, recurring pain and weakness in that hand would affect both his training and in-ring strategy, forcing him to adjust his style and rely more on timing than power. The damage didn't stop there. As his career advanced, Oscar developed persistent shoulder problems, likely a result of the thousands of punches he threw and absorbed across nearly 2 decades of combat. At one point, he underwent shoulder surgery to relieve pain and repair damage sustained during intense training camps. While the surgery helped temporarily, the pain would return, and it became clear that his joints were not bouncing back the way they once did. But perhaps the most enduring source of discomfort came from his chronic back pain, an injury not always visible in the ring. Years of explosive footwork, road work, sparring, and weightlifting took a heavy toll on De La Hoya's spine. He spoke in later interviews about suffering from debilitating back pain, particularly after intense training or long travel schedules related to Golden Boy events. Unlike the high-profile surgeries or viral hospital videos, back pain was a silent enemy, always there and slowly wearing him down. These injuries weren't just inconvenient, they were the cumulative price of greatness. Every punch thrown, every round fought, and every training camp pushed his body further past its limits. And as fans cheer and move on to the next star, legends like De La Hoya are often left to suffer quietly in retirement. Fighters like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Arturo Gatti all paid similar physical prices because boxing doesn't offer pensions or safety nets, and when the lights go out and the cameras stop rolling, the pain doesn't. Now, at 52 years old, Oscar is facing the full cost of that lifetime in the ring, and it's unclear what his future in boxing promotions looks like. Physically, he's clearly limited. The comeback fight he once dreamed of is unlikely to ever happen. Even in his role as a promoter, health scares have impacted his ability to appear at major events, travel internationally, or take part in day-to-day operations. Add to that the financial scandals and lawsuits that have shaken the credibility of Golden Boy promotions, and it becomes even harder to see a clear path forward. Younger companies with stronger rosters and modern marketing tactics are starting to dominate the space. And with Canelo Alvarez, the fighter he once built his brand around, gone, De La Hoya no longer has the leverage he once held at the negotiation table. Yet for all the damage, all the decline, Oscar De La Hoya still shows moments of fight. He occasionally appears ringside, speaks about rebuilding trust, and insists that the Golden Boy can still compete. But whether that's a realistic goal or a symptom of the fighter's refusal to quit is up for debate. Would you love to see Oscar De La Hoya in a comeback fight? Tell us in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.